Hi everyone, so you may or may not know, you'll know it's September, that I can be pretty certain, but it's also second-hand September, so this is a hashtag slash campaign that runs throughout the month of September that encourages you to buy second-hand, to be a little bit more sustainable, and the focus for this hashtag is on sustainable fashion purchasing habits, because it's actually the modern industry to have either the largest or the second largest negative impact on our environment. And because of that, I've been sharing some of my secondhand purchases and outfits over on my Instagram, where I like to talk a little bit about sustainable fashion now and then. But I thought, you know, what else would be in the spirit? It would be to haul some secondhand books. So I decided to gather together all the books I bought secondhand in both August and September and share them with you in this book haul. If you'll remember, I actually used to do a dedicated secondhand book haul along with a library book haul every month for a while. But more recently I've just been sort of like mashing everything together in my videos as and when I have the chance to film them. But I do love secondhand book shopping as well as new book shopping and using my library and using ebooks. Like, I am somebody who reads and attains books in all formats, and I think they all have their place and they're all wonderful and they all offer different opportunities for readers and writers. So in this video, like I said, I'm going to share with you the books that I found both in secondhand bookshops or ordered for myself online secondhand. So I think 3 of these books I bought online, which means I probably had more intention with my purchasing. I sort of went out of my way to look up those books and see if I could get a secondhand copy online, whereas the other ones were generally books I just came across in a charity shop and thought sounded good, so picked up, and a lot of them were fantastic bargains. So without further ado, let's jump into the books. So I'll go through the books that I just picked up randomly in charity shops first, and one of them was only 50p, as you can tell from the sticker on the front that I started to take off and it was not happening. It was going to take the cover with it. So this copy of the Greek political oratory, I am just going to have to keep a 50p sticker on, but it'll be a nice reminder of what a bargain I got. So this is an older Penguin Classics edition, but these are still pretty like reliable just for like a sort of flick through, and it's a collection of different speeches from various different ancient Greek orators. And you may or may not know, but my speciality in terms of research, what I'm doing my PhD on and what I'm sort of like the most in-depth familiar with in terms of ancient Greek history is oratory and court speeches and the legal history of Athens, which is where all of these orators wrote their speeches for. So I thought this would be a really fun selection. I don't have this collection and I just could not leave this behind. Honestly, couldn't believe I found it in a charity shop because it's not one of the more popular ancient Greek classics, but it collects together various different orators like I mentioned, and I don't own this specific collection. It has a selection of speeches by Demosthenes, 2 speeches by Isocrates, 1 by Antichides, and then Thucydides' recollection of Pericles' funeral speech. So some of the speeches in this I do own in other editions, some I don't own any editions of and usually just refer to online because you can access all this ancient literature there. But it's always just like fun and easy and handy to have physical copies, especially when it's something I read a lot of and research a lot of and end up taking it to the library if I don't have my own copy. So 50p, could not say no. We then have another 50p bargain, as you can tell from a little green sticker, which I got in the same charity shop. These were both from a Salvation Army store, and this is the first in a middle grade murder mystery series, which I'd actually seen talked about online. This, I believe, was on my wish list. It was a book I'd sort of had in the back of my mind to check out because of online reviews, and could not believe it when I saw a copy for 50p in the bookshop. Of course, I couldn't leave it behind. There was books 1 and 2, but I'm not typically somebody who buys multiple books in a series unless I know I already enjoy that series. So maybe I would have bought books 2 and 3 if I'd already read and enjoyed book 1, but since I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, I decided to leave book 2, and then somebody who might be looking for that book will come across it, even when they are 50p. So like I said, this is a middle grade murder mystery, and from what I am aware, it's about 2 young girls at a girls' boarding school who decide to set up a girls' detective agency, but end up with a lot more on their plate than they expected when they find the body of their science teacher dead, obviously, and decide to take it upon themselves to solve that mystery. And I love a little murder mystery, especially like a middle grade one, so I think that sounds like a lot of fun. I then picked up 3 books in Oxfam. I had such like a successful day this day. It was just in the same Oxfam shop, which was a dedicated Oxfam bookshop that's in Newington in Edinburgh, and all 3 of these books jumped out at me, and some of them I'd heard of and already wanted to read, and some of them I hadn't but thought sounded brilliant. So for example, never heard of this before but could not leave it behind. It's The Secret Documents of Sherlock Holmes by June Thompson. So this is a additional Sherlock Holmes mystery written by a modern author, which is something I really enjoy. I collect a lot of these kind of books and like to try out new authors writing new Sherlock Holmes mysteries. Obviously they're never quite the same as the originals, but I still have a lot of fun reading them as a Sherlock Holmes fan. And from what I understand, this one is a paranormal case. So the premise is that there are a selection of cases involving Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes which were never shared with the public because they were actually paranormal and no one would have believed them. And this series by June Thompson is following those mysteries. So I'm not sure, is this like the first in a series? I don't actually know where this comes because there are 3 other books on the back here. So I guess it could not be the first book in the series, but given that it is about characters I already know very, very well, I don't think that will matter, and I have certainly like jumped in randomly with other Sherlock Holmes series before and still enjoyed them, so looking forward to that. We then have one that again I'd heard a lot about online and wanted to pick up anyway, so I was so pleased to see a secondhand copy of, and that's The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. So Holly Black is probably best known on BookTube for her Cruel Prince series, which is YA fantasy series, and I do really enjoy those books, but this is a middle grade book that I believe came out before The Cruel Prince. It's slightly older, like backlist title of hers. It first came out in 2013, and I've always sort of been curious about it, and even throughout the years it has continued to crop back up on different people's channels and it's always stayed in the back of my mind, so again could not resist it when I spotted a copy. It says Tana lives in a world where walled cities called cold towns exist. In them, quarantined monsters and humans mingle in a decadently bloody mix of predator and prey. It's an eternal party, shown on TV 24 hours a day, gorgeous, glamorous, deadly. The problem is, once you've passed through Cold Town's gates, you can never leave. So it sounds like quite a dark, I think this is middle grade. Part of me is like starting to wonder, is it YA? But I'm sure this is like slightly younger. I guess it could be on the younger YA spectrum. But it's definitely darker, maybe a little bit dystopian, maybe a little bit paranormal, and I'm excited to read it. Then another one that I had seen before online and considered picking up, but certainly hadn't heard as much about as Cold Town, is The Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. Do you ever wonder if like the same person donated all of these? Like maybe the same person really likes the same kind of books as me and just didn't think they'd reread them, so donated them all at the same time, and I've bought all of their books. But this sounds really fun. This is a fantastical, paranormal, historical mystery novel, and it's the first in a series. It's set in London, April 1812. Lady Helen Wrexall is set to step into Regency society and find a husband. But this step will take her from glittering ballrooms and the bright lights of Vauxhall Garden into a shadowy world of demonic creatures and deadly powers. Drawing her into the underworld is Lord Carlston, a man of dubious reputation and infuriating manners. He believes Helen has a destiny beyond the ballroom, a sacred duty to protect humanity. Not the usual aspirations of a young lady in her first London season. A delightfully dangerous adventure of self-discovery and dark choices set against the backdrop of whispered secrets, soirees and high society. I love Regency novels set in London, I love a mystery, and I love a bit of magic, so these kind of things always appeal to me, and I'm hoping this is like a new series that I'll want to continue on with. We then probably have one of my best finds of recent months, and that is Dragon Rider by Cornelia Funk. So this is the most stunning hardback edition of this book, which is a definite middle grade title, middle grade fantasy book about dragons by quite a acclaimed author. So Cornelia Funk writes a lot of middle grade stories and has been doing for a long time. I know people my age who really enjoyed her other books when they were children, and this is a slightly more recent series by her. When did this one come out? It's published by Chicken House, and it first came out in 2000, so I think she has some older books than this even, and it's even illustrated with a fold-out map in the middle. I know I'm not a child, but this makes me feel childlike joy. This is so perfect. And as you know, I love dragons, yet have never read any Cornelia Funk, despite her middle grade being very heavily focused on that specific mythical beast. So when I spotted this, and I did a double check on Goodreads because I have a bad habit of picking up books that are not the first in the series, and I could not resist taking it home with me, and it was also only £2. I actually picked this one up in the St Columbus's charity bookshop in Edinburgh, which is in the sort of Stockbridge area, and I'm always very passionate about supporting them and giving my money to them, because that was the hospice where my dad was in the sort of last few weeks and months of his life when he had terminal cancer, and the support that they provided us was absolutely incredible, and I don't know what my mum and I would have done with them. So if you are in Edinburgh and want to check out a charity bookshop, I would highly recommend giving them a visit, not just because they have an awesome selection, but because they're an awesome cause. So I'm really looking forward to finally reading something by Cornelia Funk. And then lastly, for books I found in charity shops before I move on to the 3 I ordered online, is The Dragon Queen. So more dragons. This is a mass market fantasy paperback, which I am a sucker for. Like, I cannot resist picking these up in bookshops, and if they're the first in the series and I haven't read them before, and particularly if they're by women, I cannot leave them behind. This was by Alice Borchardt, and it is the first in the Tales of Guinevere. So this is a retelling of the King Arthur legends, but with a focus on Guinevere, who in this instance is also a magician. So not just Merlin, she too has magical prowess, and in this book I believe she has to rescue her new husband Arthur from something terrible that has befallen him, and she must use her magical powers to do so. So I think that sounds like so much fun, like a kick-ass female retelling of the King Arthur legend. Love it. I think Guinevere looks particularly fierce on this book cover, and I just couldn't leave it behind. I got this one in the Shelter bookshop in Stockbridge, so if you're interested, just in case you're in Edinburgh looking for charity bookshops. We then, like I mentioned, have 3 books which I did order online, but I ordered second hand. First up is one you may have actually seen on a TBR before, because I got it out of the library and just never had a chance to read it, but I obviously am in a new library district, having moved from London to Edinburgh, and my current library doesn't have it, so I decided to treat myself to a second-hand copy, and that's The Rift by Nina Allen, which is a contemporary sci-fi horror mystery novel about a woman whose sister went missing many years ago and then turns up years later claiming to have been abducted by aliens, and it's all about the mystery of like where she's been, what happened to her, is there aliens, is there something science fiction-y or paranormal going on, and what is the truth and what are the answers. And I think this sounds brilliant. I've also heard incredible things about Nina Allen. She comes like really highly recommended in the sort of slightly dark literary subsection of literature, so I've been meaning to read her for a while. We then, continuing on the dark theme, I have Bone China by Laura Purcell. This is another author who I've heard a lot of incredible things about but have not read yet, and this I believe is her most recent title, and I'm in love with this cover. I should probably actually read this now. Like, I should read this in the sort of autumny Halloweeny season. Maybe this will be one of the next books I pick up, because I really feel like it's capturing my Halloween spirit on that front cover. I'm not sure I can summarise this one off the top of my head, so I'll just read the back to you. Consumption has ravaged Louise Pinecroft's family, leaving her and her father alone and heartbroken. But Dr. Pinecroft has plans for a revolutionary experiment to relaunch his medical career. 40 years later, Hester Y arrives at Morveran House to take up a position as nurse to the now partially paralysed and almost entirely mute Miss Pinecroft. Hester has fled to Cornwall to try and escape her past, but she soon discovers that her new home may be just as dangerous as her last. I love, I think I've mentioned many times, sort of multiple timeline mysteries, so lots of dark secrets. Sounds great. Then lastly, we have The Perfect Stranger by Megan Miranda. I think you might have seen in some of my recent book hauls as well, but I was really doing a lot of research on thriller books of late, and thriller books that just sounded like my cup of tea and that I wanted to check out, and found a few authors that were recommended, including Megan Miranda, so I decided to treat myself to one of her books secondhand and see if I was a fan. This is The Perfect Stranger, I think I've already said that. And this one says, having reached a dead end in Boston, failed journalist Leah Stevens needs a change. When she runs into an old friend, Emmy Gray, who is moving to rural Pennsylvania, Leah decides to join her. But their fresh start is quickly threatened when a woman with an eerie resemblance to Leah is assaulted by the lake, and Emmy disappears days later. Determined to find Emmy, Leah helps Detective Kyle Donovan to investigate her friend's life for clues. But with no family or digital footprint, the police begin to suspect that there is no Emmy Gray. Forced to question her version of reality, Leah must uncover the truth, no matter how dark or terrible it may be. That does sound really good to me. I'd kind of forgotten. I'd read obviously the synopsis when I bought it secondhand, but had sort of, it had slipped my mind, and now I've got re-sparked enthusiasm and really want to pick up soon. So those are all of my secondhand purchases for the months of August and September. Hopefully you enjoyed this little book haul of random bits and pieces. I'd love to hear about any particularly successful finds you've had in terms of secondhand books even this whole year, whether it was something you were looking for or just came across entirely by accident. And I'd also love to hear if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye everyone!